Hi, Bob Rasooli, Orange County, California. In this video, I want to talk about damage mechanism reviews, or DMRs, and what you need to know for the API 570 exam. This is a topic that can be confusing because API 570 defines the requirement, but the real technical details are found in API 571. So what exactly is a damage mechanism review? In simple terms, it is the structured process of identifying all the credible forms of deterioration that could affect a piping system or circuit. The purpose is to look at the service conditions, the metallurgy, and the operating history, and then ask, what are the likely damage mechanisms that could threaten this system? According to API 570, you cannot build a valid inspection plan unless you first perform a DMR. It is not optional. It is the foundation of effective inspection planning. The reason API 570 emphasizes this step is because piping failures are rarely random. They are usually the result of predictable degradation, whether that is corrosion, cracking, erosion, or creep. By performing a DMR, inspectors and reliability engineers can ensure that inspections are aimed at the real risks, not just general wall thickness measurements. For example, if you know that high temperature sulfidation is possible, you place thickness monitoring at elbows and downstream of pumps. If you know chloride stress corrosion cracking is a credible threat in stainless steel piping, you include PT or angle beam UT. The inspection plan becomes targeted and science-based. Now here is the crucial link to remember for the exam. API 570 requires that a DMR be performed, but API 571 is the document that provides the details you need to actually do it. API 571 describes more than 60 different mechanisms. For each one, it tells you the conditions where it occurs, the appearance of the damage, the vulnerable materials, and the inspection methods that work best. In other words, the exam question may begin in API 570, but the answer often comes from API 571. For instance, imagine the exam gives you a case where a carbon steel line is operating around 600 degrees Fahrenheit in a hydrotreater, and elbows downstream of pumps show uniform thinning. API 570 tells you to identify the mechanism. The answer lies in API 571, which points to high temperature sulfidation, describes the general thinning appearance, notes the effect of low silicon content in steels, and recommends UT at high velocity locations. In another case, the exam might describe an overhead stainless steel line in a crude unit carrying water and chlorides with cracks appearing at welds. API 570 directs you to identify the mechanism, while API 571 provides the detail that this is chloride stress corrosion cracking, with classic transgranular cracking in austenitic stainless steel, requiring PT or UT for detection. A third example might involve small bore piping downstream of an injection point in an FCC slurry circuit, where weld toes show localized thinning. API 570 tells you to perform a DMR, and API 571 provides the explanation that this is erosion corrosion accelerated by slurry particles, with recommended inspection using localized UT or profile RT. These examples show how the two codes work together. API 570 sets the requirement to perform the review. API 571 equips you with the knowledge to answer what mechanism is involved, what it looks like, and how to inspect for it. This is not just about the exam. In refinery practice, the same principle applies. Suppose during a turnaround, a refinery switches to a crude feed with higher naphthenic acid content. A DMR would identify naphthenic acid corrosion as a new risk. API 571 would describe its grooving appearance, explain the temperature ranges where it is active, and guide the inspection team to monitor elbows and fittings where velocity is high. Without that DMR, inspections might continue unchanged and miss the new threat until a failure occurred. So the bottom line is this: a damage mechanism review is the formal process of identifying all credible forms of deterioration for a piping system. API 570 requires it as the basis for inspection planning, and API 571 provides the technical knowledge you need to carry it out. On the exam, when you are presented with a description of service conditions, material type, and observed damage, you should immediately think about API 571 for the detailed mechanism and inspection method. That is what you should know about DMRs in the API 570 exam.